Hello there, my fellow Cybertronians. This is the Mega Ginger and the Ginger Transformer podcast. Yo. This one's a bit of a weird one, so just go with me on it. What voices do you hear in your head? Let me explain. We all read the Transformers comics, and thanks to all the TV shows we have, G1, Armada, the Unicron trilogy, not Armadaverse, Unicron trilogy, RID, Bayverse, War for Cybertron trilogy, etc., etc., etc. We know the voices of the actors who do many of the characters. Unfortunately, given so many new or like original but only as in toy form characters, it leaves a lot to be desired cast wise, like voice cast wise. So I just want to know if anyone else does this apart from me. You probably do. Let me give you an example. We have the Decepticon Thunderwing, quite big. Well, not quite big in IDW. We didn't really hear him speak so much as he's just controlled by Bludgeon. But in the Marvel comics, the original Generation 1 US and UK comics, Thunderwing is quite a big deal to the point where he is a Decepticon leader. But if you're going to give him a voice, who? For me, in my head, whenever he was in the comic and he was talking to the Mayhem Attack Squad or in the very few lines he got in IDW, for example. The voice in my head for him was Leonard Nimoy, but more Galvatron-esque Leonard Nimoy than Spock Leonard Nimoy, because obviously Thunderwing was a nutter, a proper nutter. This is the kind of thing I want to. I'm asking, please fill the comment section with it. Is it just me? Once again, I highly doubt it, given the just multitude of characters that are in the comics who are not in the actual TV program or the movies or anything like that. I mean, for example, like I said, Leonard Nimoy, he was the voice of Galvatron in the 86 movie. He was also the voice of Sentinel Prime in one of the Bayverse movies. I think it was, I don't know, everyone had Chicago getting blown up, and I think it was the third one. Not much of a Bayverse fan, so I'm not. I know there's like five, and eventually there will be another one. I'm going to run down a list of some characters that I've got in my head, and how they sound depending on the personalities I have gathered from them in the comics. And for example, Impactor was in War for Cybertron. He was in the first part of the trilogy, but by this point, I have an Impactor in the original G1 UK comics. Nothing in Dreamwave. IDW was in it quite a lot. Skybound, no sign of him yet. But point being, pardon me, Impactor, a rather important character, and in some of those comics, but no kind of like voice for him. So my voice for him in my little head is Jason Statham. We all know him. He plays Christmas in the Expendables movies, Jonas in the Meg movies, and he's been in multiple other films. I think I have about as much hair as he does in every single one of those bloody films. But he is, in most of these, he's a hard ass, and if not the leader of whatever he's doing, he's like second to the leader. For example, IDW comics, Springer was in charge of the Wreckers here because he was in jail. When he shows up, he's now second in command to Springer, basically. But eventually does get, the Wreckers back under his own command. And then, well, they took his death in the original ones to make Springer the leader. But you get the gist. And it was basically how it was a scene in the original Expendables film where Christmas finds his girlfriend's been hit by a new boyfriend. He goes down and knocks fuck out of not just him, but his five friends. And I'm sitting going, that's Impactor stuff. He would be like, Hubcap, who gave you a black eye? That guy, his friends, give me 5 minutes. Because Hubcap was a kind of wrecker. I think he was like the communications officer or something, didn't really get into the big fights in the IDW universe. But it was just like Jason Statham, that's the voice I have for him in my head from now on, just like Leonard Nimoy for Thunderwing. I've got a few more examples. Feel free to, go make a cup of tea or something during this, or just randomly call me crazy. but like I said, I'm pretty sure a lot of us do this. Right, Bludgeon. Controversial. Nicolas Cage, because given who Bludgeon is, but Nicolas Cage, people know him from pretty much every film that's out there. Long Legs, Ghost Rider, that kind of thing. For me, Bludgeon's voice was very Nick Cage-esque. So if you ever watched any Nick Cage films where he just starts going, aha, during it, like just I'm Nick Cage kind of way. When Bludgeon raises his voice, that's what I hear. And believe it or not, in some of the dialogue, it works. Not all of it, but to me, it works. Straxcus, Lord Straxcus, sorry. A bit left field here once again. For me, Ben Kingsley. Trevor from the Iron Man slash Marvel films. I say Iron Man slash Marvel because obviously once Iron Man's gone, he's in other films that do not contain Iron Man. But he started in Iron Man 3. He's also head psychiatrist in Shutter Island. I don't know if you've anyone seen Shutter Island. Brilliant film. If you've not watched it, you should watch it. Straskis, a lot of the times he is shown this kind of, he's quite calm for an evil warlord, kind of got the voice and just, eventually he raises it along with his like, Energon X, right, and just hacks people to bits. But for me, that was like a kind of Ben Kingsley kind of thing. Especially after his performance in Iron Man 3. It was like, I could believe he's the Mandarin if I didn't realize straight from the get go that he wasn't. Emirate Zaron, leader of the Wreckers and leader of the Cybertronian Autobots in the Generation 1 continuity. Well, Optimus is on Earth. Patrick Stewart, I shouldn't even need to tell. Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek Next Generation, 4 Next Generation movies, and the series Picard. Also, Professor X in the original X-Men trilogy and various other films in that canon as well. I always thought that he was while Emirate Zaron himself was quite small in stature, he had this commanding presence. And whenever Patrick Stewart walked onto the set of The Next Generation as Jean-Luc Picard, sweet Christ, you listened. Commanding presence. Turmoil. He was specific. He was a Decepticon specific to the IDW universe. I don't know if he'll be brought into Skybound, but the amount of carnage suggests yes, he will be. Massive black Decepticon with a cannon for a hand, which would retract from his hand, so you'd see his actual hand as well. But yeah, I had this voice down as Ron Perlman. Hellboy, Hannibal Chow in Pacific Rim. Pretty sure he is in a TV series to do with bikers. I don't watch it, but he's quite famous for doing that apparently. But yeah, Ron Perlman worked for the voice of Turmoil, which once again, calm, deep kind of timbre, and very rare when he finally gets going. Kind of like Hellboy when he gets thrown off a building and shouts crap, something like that. Diatlas, Sir Ian McKellen. Once again, this is one of these names you don't really need me to describe, but I'll do it anyway. Gandalf and pretty much all the Lord of the Rings stuff. Magneto and pretty much all of the X-Men stuff, unless Michael Fassbender was in. He wasn't in much. He was in like once again IDW stuff. And given now that Atlas obviously was in Zone, one episode of Zone, Transformers Zone. That was season 4 basically of the Transformers Japanese stuff. And obviously it was in Japanese and the voice was not really distinctive, so it was like you could have used anyone. So I went Ian McKellen. And for some of the dialogue in the IDW comics, it worked. Star Saber, this one was a favourite of mine, because Star Saber has his own TV series, like season 3 of the Japanese stuff, Transformers Victory. Once again, all in Japanese, no sort of dub, so it was like just give him whatever voice you want. I didn't go with his more heroic actions in the TV series to influence my judgment here. I went with his more, I am a holy crusader for God and I'll kill anything in my way kind of stuff in IDW. Karl Urban, and it was the Karl Urban from Judge Dredd kind of voice that I used. But you know Karl Urban, like I said, Judge Dredd, reboot Judge Dredd, not the one we're still in. The Boys plays Billy Butcher. That's pretty much what he's famous for right now. Scourge, not our Scourge, Scourge and Thor Ragnarok. You know the actor. His voice, that kind of deep, once again, a deep kind of voice, deep scratch kind of voice. Which really hit home when there was this massive battle in one of the comics, and he basically guts the Atlas like a fish, and he was like, "Your God hates you," and that made me think, Judge Dredd. I mean, the motherfucker's basically been judged, so he's judged that his God hates him. Well, Star Saber guts him, you know. So I just thought Karl Urban, that's that. Be all end all. There's no argument there. Please argue because I want to know other people's opinions here. Tarn, Once again, an IDW creation, leader of the DJD. This person might not be as well known if you don't watch Supernatural. It's an actor called Mark Sheppard. He played Crowley in Supernatural. He was also in Doctor Who, the Impossible Astronaut episode with Matt Smith, along with his father as well, his actual real life father. And he was in a couple of episodes there as well. Bar that, I can't really tell what else he's in. But it's the way that Crowley, he would speak as Crowley in Supernatural that really got that. Because Tarn was one of these ones, he could actually use his voice to kill you. He was very calm. And eventually, when he went rah for any reason, you knew shit hit the fan, you know? But it reminds me of a panel in one of the comics where he was on the space phone, basically, the Shockwave. And his voice basically brought Shockwave to his knees, and Shockwave was ready to basically Spark was going to go out. He was going to die. It was a very impressive power Tarn had. He could talk people to death, kind of like me. And Shockwave ended up, I think it was blowing off part of his own head or something, or blowing off his own hand just so he didn't die, basically. And I'm saying, going, Crowley, there's nothing, that's Mark Sheppard's Crowley. There's no other voice that could do that. Deathsaurus, the villain of the season 3 Japanese Transformers Victory cartoon, basically the opposite of Star Saber. Once again, someone from Supernatural, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, more famous for playing Negan in The Walking Dead, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and very recently in season 4 of The Boys as Kessler. In season 4 of The Boys, Billy Butcher's friend. Don't know if friend is the right word if you've actually seen season 4 of The Boys. That worked because Deathsaurus, Jesus, and it was more Deathsaurus from the latter half, the second run of the IDW stuff. Didn't last long, but Deathsaurus was a truly fearsome maniac who you could actually see walking by swinging a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. You know, you could. He was a senator as well, and I could picture him like that. And let's face it, in the cartoon and Victory, he had a lot of really weird ass weapons. So once again, you can imagine just pulling that out from nowhere and beating someone to death with it. Hubcap, I mentioned him earlier. Hubcap, not going to be known for anything else other than Nog in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Aaron Eisenberg. He didn't go on to do, as far as I'm aware, much else. I think he either retired. I know R.I.P. He is no longer with us, so that's why he doesn't do anything more recent for obvious reasons. But I think he retired after playing Nog in Deep Space Nine. I could be wrong. I know he did a lot of conventions. He's my basically my voice casting for Hubcap. Not really someone that's around a lot in a lot of the comic book universes, but good to have a voiceover for it, you know? Rung, people will know him from the Adventures on the Lost Light and the IDW comics. Once again, an IDW creation. Rung turns out, spoiler alert, turns out he's Primus. Read the comics. You won't believe it any more than I did. And he's a psychiatrist. I instantly go to Kelsey Grammer, who played Frasier for like 11 seasons. He was also in this TV series Frasier. He was also Frasier and Cheers. If you ever watched that, he was Beast in X-Men 3, and he actually was in Transformers 4: Age of Extinction. He was like the director of the CIA or something. Like he was the asshole. He's good at playing assholes. The man himself is not an asshole. The man himself is lovely, but you know, and I just wrong. Psychiatrist. It was either that or it was the guy that played his brother Niles was getting the voice for that one because they both played psychiatrists. Very, very just kind of on the nose, but that's that's just me. If I think it fits, it fits. Carnavac. Carnavac was a difficult one for me because you saw a lot of Carnavac more in the Marvel UK comics back in the day. Not really anything much in the US comics back in the day. He is in one of the record comics in IDW, but bar that, not a lot of comic book action. Who knows about Skybound? They might bring him in. But for me, that was Benicio del Toro, the collector in Marvel, and the main character in The Wolfman, the good one with Anthony Hopkins. I just thought that voice goes with, he's not like a tortured soul at first in the original Marvel stuff. He's a very straight shooter. They're teaming up to fight Galvatron with the Wreckers, and then he's going to kill those that are survivors. After that, he's a bit more tortured. you know, because he and the Autobots team up to create the team, the Survivors. Now, while the Collector isn't that much of a tortured person, you can hear it is a bit kind of tortured in the Wolfman because of everything he goes through in the Wolfman. You know, he loses his brother, finds out his dad's a wolf who killed his mother. He turns into a wolf himself, he tries to kill his brother's now widowed, now widow. You know, it's good to not have someone with this deep, gruff voice for a character. You've noticed that a lot of them have been kind of like deep voices, gruff voices, solid timbre kind of. No, it's good to have someone with a bit of range. You know, my last example here, and then you can all just kind of go, what the hell did I just sit through? Swerve. Now, Swerve is in Generation 1. In one episode, has no speaking lines, like Tailgate. Okay? Basically, they gave you characters in there who you could just make up any voice you wanted for. So I didn't really have any cues. There was nothing to go on in any comics before that, like the original G1 comics and the Generation 1 cartoon. There was nothing. He shone in the IDW comics. His wit, his banter, his ability to basically turn anything into a frigging joke, and then at the same time go, you know, get out of my fucking bar. Ben Stiller. It was the only person whose voice I thought suited that character so well was Ben Stiller, especially when he's torturing Tailgate, someone else who didn't have a voice in the G1 thing. I thought, you know, Richard Ayoade from the IT Crowd, you know. I mean, let's face it, Ben Stiller, we all know him from like Zoolander or Meet the Parents. Richard Ayoade was the IT Crowd, you know, Swerve and Tailgate, Stiller and Ayoade. And it worked. It worked in the comics, you know, because Swerve would rib the living shit out of Tailgate and everyone else, let's be fair. But mostly at Tailgate when they first met because Tailgate kind of like went to sleep and had like a 4 million year nap. And it worked. It just worked. It was like so Stiller. And it was like, yeah, that's him. He is the voice of that character. And I prayed that he never died in it, you know, and he never died in it. I was so thankful, you know. Yeah, that could just be me who does this kind of stuff. Maybe it's all like blank monotone crap when you're reading the comics. I have literally about 2, 3, 4 sheets with character names who just were only in comics or only as toys with little names next to them, you know? Loads of them. That was like a very small list. Let me know. You know, I mean, does anyone else do this kind of stuff? And if you do, what voices do you think go with what characters? I mean, in my background, I can actually see, right, here we go, right? Metal Hawk. Okay, Metal Hawk off to my left, right. Can't tell on a fucking camera. To this side of the bald. Okay, Metal Hawk. Jonathan Frakes. Land Shark and Flack, who you can see just over here, over in that kind of corner, you know. It was like it was actors from How I Met Your Mother. As I'm saying, a lot of these do not have. I mean, you've got the Combaticons, right? They have voices in Generation One, so I don't need to do that kind of stuff. But a lot of the others, no, they don't have voices. They're on comic only, or they only have toys. So there's Iron Fist is right there. Cole Meany, also known as Chief O'Brien from Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, because he was always experimenting with his light cannon and tinkering with shit. And I was like, cool, sounds right. You know, it's like a massive universe, and I don't think there's enough actual actors out there to give me all the voices I would require for all the characters. But like I said, that's a little list of my own, you know. Please comment, let me know who you, even the ones that I've mentioned, like Dunderwing, Impact, or Bludgeon, Straxus. Let me know, are these better suggestions for whoever you already think of in your head, you know, voice wise, or do you have ones that you think are better than them? Bludgeon, I'm guaranteeing someone will say, Nick Cage, really? Here's such and such. And I will probably agree with whoever you say because I'm not gonna lie, Nick Cage for Bludgeon to me works, but it's kind of a just probably work better as Spinister. Spinister is just fucking crazy. So you know, and I've seen a lot of his films. Nick Cage, not Spinisters, and boom, that would work. Comment, share your thoughts. Let me know if you think it's possibly time for me just to retire because you're sitting going, this guy's scraping the bottom of the barrel now. On that note, see you later. Till next time.